Art is evidence. Where primary scientific studies provide an understanding of a universal experience, art provides a universal understanding of a personal experience. The arts and science are both avatars of human creativity, and they both come into existence through a systematic exploration of a complex phenomenon. We write 1993. Ian Chalmers inaugurates Cochrane, the beginning of a fabulous story of developing systematic reviews of scientific studies produced in healthcare, an idea that would soon cross over to different areas of humanities and social behavioral research. Around the same time, on the other side of the big ocean, Elliot Eisner launched the idea of arts-based research and pleaded for a stronger connection between artistic practice and more conventional types of research, with the aim to convince the scientific community of the relevance of art to advance knowledge. Yet in practice, these traditions have seldom met. One of the main reasons is that review authors tend to focus on written research reports as their main source of information. However, artistically inspired research evidence might not serve the printed page too well. Creative evidence often is tangible. It might have a 3D physical appearance, or alternatively, is fluid and dynamic. Our challenge as a review community was to learn, appreciate, and embrace this full range of research-driven expression modes in communicating research findings. Artistically inspired evidence embraces the full range of visual, literary, sonic, tactile, and multimodal dimensions of expression. We had to consider the tangible nature of artistic evidence, and this challenges the way we currently collect, analyze, assess, and synthesize research data. To merge art with science, we needed to adopt a pluralistic point of view rather than a methodological deterministic one. Evidence has a weight and a height that we can register, factual evidence, but we also have to acknowledge that the tools we use to investigate are never independent of what we are able to see. Evidence comes into existence purposefully through a series of events or actions. We call these actions methods. I tend to call them conventions. Evidence is always and already in context. Evidence is in essence sensorial. Consequently, the word empirical applies to both art and science. Most importantly, evidence matters. Matter is evidence. The idea of think power became one of our guiding concepts to answer the question how to best integrate art in reviews. This could mean including artistically inspired evidence in systematic reviews, or using creative art forms as a method to express review findings, delivering a systematic review as art. The tangible nature of art invites us to believe that there are physical bodies of evidence out there, things and stuff inside or outside of us to which we have to relate. But how does one grasp the scientific essence of a material dimension? We have done a couple of attempts, and this is what I would like to illustrate via two pilot review cases in the making on two different viral infections. In the first pilot review, we questioned how matter comes to matter in studying adherence to antiretroviral therapy of young people perinatally infected with HIV. We took a fairly standard approach to reviewing evidence. We did a comprehensive search, applied in an exclusion criteria, appraised the qualitative evidence found based on the criteria thickness and intensity in terms of the material study focus. We extracted thematically inspired data in the early phases. When studying the literature, we initially made the assumption that people could simply speak about things and places, and that we would be able to grasp their ideas through words and numbers, that things and environmental conditions are just passive elements for us to act upon. A pill delivered in the context of ART therapy for HIV patients is something that one takes, not something that in itself has the power to influence people's behavior. But that's simply not true. It has its own material vitality, a vitality that, according to the review team, could not decently be captured with numbers and words, and was therefore invisible in the primary studies. It required a more visual approach. So we chose to switch our analytical strategy from a conventional thematic synthesis to storyboarding. And I'd like to take you with me to the storyboard PhD student Lynn Hendricks has created for us. We have also long assumed that we could tackle any crisis with insights from scientific evidence. And while the corona crisis was not a typical example of a black swan, it did caught us by surprise. And it was in the absence of clear reference frames and evidence that people started to create evidence in many different ways. It is in such disruptive moments that artistically inspired evidence pops up. It explains that what cannot be spoken about, for which there are no words yet. And in such cases, we start thinking with our pen, our hands, our body, our ears, all of our senses, to make art, and it happened across the world. In a second, rather unconventional type of review project, we questioned how we could best sustain life on Earth. We gathered artistic responses from artist researchers to the COVID-19 crisis, instead of searching for qualitative studies that would help us explain how people experienced COVID-19. Several scholars produced such tangible evidence during the lockdown period. We thought the most convenient way to store primary artistic evidence was an online gallery in which we brought together work and interpretation from an analytical perspective. I would like to guide you through a small part of our exhibition of primary evidence. So this is one spot where you can actually enter our gallery of primary evidence. And the pair of feet that you can see on the ground, these are mine as I'm walking through the gallery. You can look at the works from a distance, or you can also take a closer look to observe some of the details and really engage or really immerse in the gallery and the works that are on display. The works, as you can see, are clustered around several themes that you can also see appear on the wall in writings from time to time. And then when you walk a bit further, you can see bigger chunks of text next to the door. And these are, in fact, fragments of interpretation and theoretical framing by the researchers themselves. The themes that we use, they can be content-based, but sometimes we opt for an angle in which they more relate to the specific qualities of works, such as, for example, color, form, contrast, and how this brings actually out the tacit knowledge base of the maker or the deeper experience level that is not yet ready to be spoken about. Along the way, you can find notes on the wall. And our idea is actually that at the end of the exhibition, when you've walked through it, that we would leave a wall for you visitors to leave comments or perhaps make it more interactive, pretty much like you would define a living review project where evidence can be added on a permanent basis. Okay, so on the level of synthesis, naturally we chose to work with an artistically inspired medium that combines the visual with the auditory to recreate the emotional sense of disruption, discomfort in that experience of makers in the early phases of the corona crisis. So let's also have a look at that production that came out as the synthesized end product. To perhaps conclude, I return back to the year 1993, the momentum where both the evidence-based and the arts-based movement took off. This moment will be marked as a tipping point in building bridges between both communities. The requirements are simple. Unlock yourself from the types of evidence and epistemological frameworks we assume we are tied to, whilst remaining sensitive to the argument of quality of the reviews we produce. To get us started, we have done some preparatory work. We have inventoried specialized journals and platforms where artistic evidence can be found. We are using arts-based methods to prioritize and gather review questions. We are working on evaluation criteria to assess the quality of artistically inspired evidence. We have developed and tested an apparatus for the analysis of visual research material. We have merged it with conventional analytical frameworks such as thematic analysis. And we are currently building a review community in which the idea of multimodality is central. But that's perhaps a different story, one I'm happily inviting you into if you are interested. We could use all the hands, ears, pens, and bodies we can get. Thanks for listening.